it sounds better than it really was. I mean, now that I'm old, I can tell it, and yeah, I worked for the CIA, but that doesn't mean what it sounds like it means. I mean, I wasn't any James Gunn. I mean, worked a little airport. It's called VN10 Labs, and I was chief coolie boss. Coolie boss. I had 40 coolies that worked for me, and our job was to load bags of rice on C-46s and Pilatus Porters that went north. And when they came back, our job was to unload the body bags. And I did that a little over a year, and I ended up back in Vietnam. And I didn't say all this. There's some other things in there that happened in there. Eventually, I come on back. But that was a long time ago.
Now, did you two fly together?
Well, Maury and I we entered the Air Force about the same time, back in 60, 61.
Yeah.
And yeah,
60, yeah.
we graduated from Navigator School and then went off to F-89 school down here in Waco. When we left Waco, we were supposed to get backseat fighter assignments, but we didn't. We ended up getting 121 assignments, a Super Constellation 4-engine aircraft flying that 100-mile racetrack pattern off the West Coast to extend the nation's radar during the Cold War.
That's right.
Well, then we found out about the Air Commando outfit as time went on. We were only there about 6 months. And we volunteered for B-26s with the Air Commandos, and we left in May.
Okay.
I think April or May of '63, we left for Hurlburt Field, right around that time.
Yeah, because not much after that, we were in Vietnam.
Yeah, well, we left for Vietnam around the 4th of July of '63.
Yeah.
So we were in country by the end of July, early August, for a tour in the old B-26s out there, the B model, the Douglas B models. So we flew, I don't know.
I flew 70. I think you flew a little more.
I got 75 missions in the B model, and you got 70.
Yeah.
And we came back to Hurlburt Field, and we were supposed to go back for a second tour. We volunteered. They needed more air crews in the B-26s, so we volunteered to go back. But that was about the time they were really having trouble with the airframe, and they decided to ground the airplanes, so we didn't get to go back on the second tour. Then we went out to different outfits there at Hurlburt Field. You went to C-46s. I went to I went to Sky Raiders, A1s. And then we got the new prototype of the K model, first K model. And they started to form the squadron again, so we got back together in the B-26 squadron. So then we had 2 B-26Ks for training, and then the 3rd, 4th, and 5th airplane that showed up. Maury and I volunteered for another project and ended up in the Belgian Congo. We got those, what I call the 3rd, 4th, 5th airplanes. And they called Maury and I one night and said, we have a project, we need some volunteers. And of course, for some reason or other, we always had our hand up.
We hadn't learned that.
We just love the airplane, I tell you. It brought us back and from so many bad things that we got ourselves in, or difficult situations. We just loved it. And any mission in that we were ready for. So we volunteered for the Congo mission. And we took off very early one morning out of Hurlburt Field and followed a C-130. Or someplace in there we picked up a C-130 inside.
Yeah, Navy C-130.
Yeah, Navy C-130 to kind of navigate us across the ocean. We went down to, we stopped at Puerto Rico.
Puerto Rico, right.
What's the name of that?
Something Roads.
Yeah, we stopped in Puerto Rico for gas, spent the night there. We went down to Recife, Brazil. And the night at Recife, Brazil, remember it was a dark and stormy night. It was raining when we went in there. And we couldn't find quarters, or we couldn't get into quarters, and this was all pretty quiet mission. We were really under the radar, so to speak, back then. And we ended up spending the night under the wing, if I remember right.
Yeah.
We slept out on the tarmac. And from there, we went on to Ascension Island,
Right.
in the middle of the South Atlantic.
We actually found it.
Yeah, we actually found
It's not very big. It's about as big, about that big.
very small place. Yeah, yeah. And we spent, I think, maybe a couple of days there, if I remember right.
No, we spent one day.
One day?
One overnight.
But didn't we get a word that the French fight, we were going into Leopoldville in the Congo, and we had gotten word that French fighters, or something about France, did not really want us interfering or something.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I know
So the plan was to go ahead and load the guns on the airplane, I think, which we did.
Yeah.
And we landfalled way south of Leopoldville and came up from the south at low level because we didn't want to go over Brazzaville on
Okay.
the other side of the river.
Yes.
From what I
that's it.
remember.
Right. It was just the other side of the river.
Yeah,
Brazil.
yeah. So anyways, it was no problem. We got into Leopoldville that night. And then we were reassigned back down into the Congo about 700 miles.
But they told us when we left Hobart that we're going to take these airplanes to Kinshasa, Leopoldville.
Yeah, okay, right.
Same place.
Yeah, right.
And then our job was to stop. The six of us who flew the three airplanes down there, we were supposed to get on a commercial flight and come back to America, or go to Europe and then come back to America. Except when we got there on the ground, the CIA man that we didn't know much about, he was just somebody walked up. He was going to give us our airline tickets and maybe $100 to get us back to where we came from. But he didn't. He said, these airplanes have to be taken back by you to
Caminaville.
Caminaville.
Yeah, about
Camino Bay.
700 miles back in country.
That's right.
Yeah.
And we didn't have any maps. We left with lots of good maps when we left Hobart, but just to get to Africa.
Leopoldville, yeah.
And we weren't going to need any more maps after that because we were coming home. Well, we didn't have any maps. We ended up getting maps that were not flight maps, not charts. They were just old maps from the French had been in there and they'd done some, I'm not sure, survey
whatever,
or something.
yeah.
And we got some of their maps.
Yeah,
And
remember that.
we were able to, we got on, we actually found it.
Now, Caminaville was a pretty small place.
That's right.
It was a Belgian pilot training base. Big
Yeah.
runways,
Yeah.
but there was grass. When we got there was grass growing up through the concrete macadam, whatever they were made out of.
Yeah.
There hadn't been any aircraft landing on those runways in years.
Well,
And anyways, we got in there and we were met by some Belgian guys.
Yeah.
I remember a great big Belgian F-84 pilot. His name was Harry Ross. Harry Ross. And he kind of escorted us around, and they had some unused buildings. Remember, we spent the night in that barracks right under the tower at Caminaville,
yeah.
and we drew straws on who was going to go back home and who was going to stay with the airplanes.
Yeah, yeah.
Charlie Kuchai, Siegel Dickman, Maury Dow, me, and who was the other pilot?
John Slauson.
John Slauson, that's right. Yeah.
I don't know if John's still alive or not.
I don't
know
think so.
Dick's gone.
But we drew straws on who was going to stay there,
Yeah.
and I guess Maury and I lost or won. I think we won. So we stayed, you guys
But
left?
that's where
I
all
guess?
those mercenaries, that was a mercenary base.
That's right.
There were
That's right.
several hundred guys there.
Yeah. Yeah.
Come in to fight. There was a war going on there.
Yeah.
The Simba Rebellion, isn't that what it was called?
Yeah. And it had the communists were coming into the
that's
northeast part of the country and trying to take over from Moise Chambi.
Yeah.
And so we drew the straws, and I ended up staying with Maury,
Maury, yeah.
and you ended up going home.
We dig.
Oh, on the mercenaries. The mercenaries were led by Mike Hoare.
Oh,
Mike Hoare was a famous South African mercenary leader who, last time I heard, he was in jail in the Seychelles Islands, but he's written a book called Congo Mercenary. And he talks about the time when we were there. And he always talks about his air.
yeah.
He always had this air, meaning his air support, which were the B-26s flown by Cuban pilots
Yeah.
who, if you remember the Bay of Pigs invasion, there was a lot of B-26s on that invasion. The guys who flew those B-26s were now in the Congo being trained by Maury to fly the new K models. And when Maury felt they were ready to go, then I'd go in the right seat with them to make sure that they, did the checklist,
Yeah.
dropped the armament properly.
Maury, he's talking about, there were two Maury.
Maury Dow.
Yeah, Maury
Maury
Dow.
Dow. Yeah.
I'm Maury Bourne.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
They got conviction.
Yeah,
even
it gets
back
a little
then.
confusing. So, anyways, we did the 3-month thing there and finally came home. Maury and I got back together again at the squadron back in Robert. And
We were scheduled to come back to Vietnam.
yeah, we were going to go back in the
Early
cage, I guess.
64, I guess.
64,
Yeah,
yeah.
we was ready to come back in the cage. Yeah.
Well, in the meantime, I had gotten my assignment to flight school,
That's right.
to
You
pilot
got,
training.
you got to go to pilot.
Matter of fact, I got the word when I was in Africa.
Okay.
So we got back, and
And at the same time, on the same set of orders, I got the same word that I was not going to be sent to pilot training. So something else happened.
yeah, I didn't.
They
those
went to
details-
pilot training, and I was on my way back to Vietnam, and that's when I was in crash with the first K model that was lost, which ended my Air Force career.
I'm still trying to find your records. I got a copy of your crash report from, I forget which airbase had it, but it's such a bad photocopy. I can read the first 3 lines. It basically said Maury had a crash, and all the stuff at the bottom is unreadable.
Oh yeah.
Did they ever determine where you went? Like, what was your altitude when that bomb came out?
We were bombing GI trucks, old junk trucks, and probably about as high as this ceiling, probably 20 feet off the ground. Because see, we were putting down napalm, we thought. Napalm, you just go in low. But we started dropping out bombs. And that's not a good thing to do when you're only 20 foot high. Because they instantly detonate. And the wonder is that the airplane didn't instantly just crash. But it didn't. It waited a little bit longer to crash.
I believe the elevators, were they rag covered at the time? I'm thinking, and I didn't look at this airplane, but for some reason or other, I had this thing in my mind that the elevators were rag covered on
The elevators and the ailerons are still fabric covered. The vertical is
the
aluminum.
aluminum.
With the K model.
Well, when that 100-pound bomb went off at 50 feet, it took the fabric from the elevator. And I know we had some discussion about this in
Yeah.
the squadron. Although the airplane had a slight inclination to climb at that point when that happened, and that's when, who were you with?
Tom White.
Tom
Tom
White.
White, yeah.
No, you both, he said we need to get out because he didn't have any more authority on the elevator. And you both stood up and,
We went out together, I thought.
yeah.
We stood up together.
Did the horizontal stand take your leg?
No. No, which I had long arguments with people later, but it did not. Because I remember, I came over the side and things were coming loose. And of course, I was in the strip scene there, and we were like 300 miles an hour. But I went through a lot of things, pieces of airplane. And it was a long time after they blew my leg off that I went under the stabilizer, because I remember that. It took a long time for what happened, from for me to go all over that wing, and then finally went underneath the horizontal, and then finally tumbled to that. They got my rib, and so what happened before I got to the tail.
And you tell a story that you never wore a belt on your flight suit because you didn't need to. And
Yeah.
for some reason, God put a belt on your waist, and if you hadn't had that, you wouldn't have been able to tourniquet yourself, and you'd been dead before they found you.
Can I respond to that?
Go ahead.
I think I remember the story of you telling it in the
I don't
hospital.
always tell it the same way, so but go ahead.
Well, let me tell you my version, and you can clear that up. It was very cold that morning, and you had worn long underwear.
Yeah.
And you see how thin he is. He's never been any heavier than this. And that long underwear would not stay up when he put it on, so he put a belt on underneath his flight suit to hold up that long
That's
underwear.
exactly right.
And then put the flight. That's right. And that's what he used for a tourniquet to save his life.
But I didn't realize that I was going to get parachute. In my mind, I was thinking I'm going to cut out some of them lanyards and do the job. But then I thought, hey, wait a minute, I got a leather belt. It's a lot like this one right here. And it worked great. Well, I just put it around there and hauled back on it. Said, well, I'm just going to sit here till somebody else shows up. And they came eventually. Apparently, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah.